What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the X-Transbots Paragon with the Ocular Medicus, both versions of a Masterpiece Scale First Aid. So shout out to Grant Z for allowing me to take a look at his copy of Paragon. This is my personal copy, that's why he has a Autobot symbol here, so just ignore that, it doesn't come with that. But we are going to do a comparison, as I always mention with these. I try to be as objective as possible, but of course there's subjectivity involved when you're comparing things like this. So if I pick one and you prefer the other, then you win. I try to do these comparisons to help people decide what direction they want to go with their collection, up to and including getting both of them. And I know there's a lot of people that are going to get both of them because they want these guys for combined mode and these guys for bot mode. So whatever floats your boat. But let's get started. We'll talk about the accessories. All right, so here's the accessories that come with. There's not a lot here, but normally I would not include combined parts. In fact, we're not going to look at combined mode just because we haven't completed either one. Same as what I did with the onslaughts, right? We didn't look at the combined mode parts. But because this turns into a med bay, as you can see here, it can be used as an accessory for robot mode. So it does count in this case. But they both have a gun. The X-Transbots is painted black, whereas this one is black plastic. And then you get the med bay for X-Transbots. So we're going to give accessories over to X-Transbots. All right, next we'll talk about the gimmicks on these two. And they both have weapon storage in vehicle mode, but the X-Transbots has opening doors and opening trunk in the vehicle mode. So I'm going to give, just by a hair, over to X-Transbots the gimmicks. All right, now we'll take a look at the cartoon accuracy and the sculpt. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there so you can take a look for yourself. And both of them are pretty darn close. They both got the head shape and coloring down pretty well. The chest area also both shaped well. I think even though there's a darker color here on the Ocular Max, there is a shade difference in the cartoon image, at least the one I'm using here. By the way, the images I'm using here are all from allspark.com. They have a whole set of these. It's got the Toei animation, the Sunbow animation, so it's kind of a combination of things. But based on this one, I think both are pretty darn good. I like the shape of the X-Transbots better, but I think the color difference is more accurate on this guy. Coming down to the thighs and the waist, pretty even there, not much difference. On the legs, I think X-Transbots, because they put the translucent windows here on the inside versus just the red part, I think that looks a little bit off, having that. And then a little bit of blue up here from the rear window, that also is a little bit off. Coming to the side, they both say emergency here on the side, but the MMC or Ocular Max has the windows on the side of the legs. And then on the back, both of them are kind of a mess, but X-Transbots did a really good job putting this cover panel. The only purpose of that panel is to make it look cleaner on the back and more cartoon accurate, and it definitely looks more cartoon accurate. Ocular Max has the lights and the windshield and a bunch of panels back here. So I think I'm going to give cartoon accuracy over to X-Transbots. When it comes to sculpt, I think I prefer the Ocular Max. It's cleaner overall. Underneath here, there's a little bit of gaps, but both of them kind of have some messiness there. But coming to the back, I don't know, maybe it's very close. There's a bunch of junk down here, but then you got these panels hanging out. It's very close, but I think I'm going to give Sculpt over to Ocular Max. Just a little bit cleaner without the windows and this blue part on the legs. All right, next we'll talk about the paint and build on these two. And when it comes to paint, the X-Transbots is pretty much 100% painted, and it does look pretty good, especially in person. The Ocular Max has a little bit of paint on the eyes and on the chest, and a little bit of blue here on the side, but that's basically it. So by default, because they're not fully painted, X-Transbots is going to win on paint. However, they do have some paint chipping, especially in the leg area. When you transform these, a lot of white paint chips come off. It's typical for X-Transbots. So that's going to speak more to the build quality. And when it comes to this, for whatever reason, the way they built this, if you have the legs straight, instead of rotated, he tends to lean back on these feet, and unless you have it posed properly, he will fall backwards. So it's just little things like that that still plague these X-Transbots figures. And then I talked about the paint chipping. I talked about some of the pieces here you have to move plastic. It's just, I wish they could fix some of that stuff, because they really would be a #1 company if they could get rid of that, because this looks great in all 3 modes. It just is a pain to deal with. So I'm going to build quality over Ocular Max. This is a pleasure to handle, transform. You have no worries going back and forth between modes. So yeah. Next, we'll take a look at the articulation. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually. The X-Transbot's head is on a rotating swivel, so it gets up. Actually, it's not a rotating swivel, it's a ball joint. So forward and backward, side to side, and rotation around. Nice movement on the head. Shoulders right around on a friction, a little bit loose for my taste. Up to the side on a hinge. You do have a butterfly joint here, which is unusual for this character. Rotation at the bicep. Double jointed elbow, although one of the joints is a little bit too tight, but it does get you the full bend there on the elbow. Rotation at the wrist, in and out movement at the wrist. Fingers are not individually articulated. The bottom 3 are connected, and then the top one is separate, but it's curled, so it's kind of pointless. And then the thumb is also curled. I hate these hands. I just can't stand them. So, but they are partially articulated. Coming to the waist, you have a rotation. You have a double jointed ab crunch, so you can lift up on this joint. I hate the way it feels, but it does work. You get, you get a crunch down to there and back a little bit as well, and a rotation. Hip skirts will move out of the way, all 3 sides. Legs kick up there, then a ratchet. Back to there and a ratchet. Out to the side on friction, it holds nicely. Rotation of the thigh on a universal. Single jointed knee held up by some of the parts here. Actually, it's a double jointed knee. You just can't use the double joint. You can only use one joint, just due to the sculpt. The knees are kind of annoying, to be honest. They tend to get out of whack, and you have to kind of line them up. Otherwise, he stands unevenly. So even though there are 2 joints there, you really can only utilize one of them. You have ankle tilts here, forward and backward movement, which I wish it didn't have, because it's so loose that he falls backwards on his heels. Luckily, there's heels, so he doesn't fall down all the way, but he leans back. And that's it for X-Transbots. So now let's take a look at the Ocular Max. The head is on a ball joint as well, so back to there, down to there. The neck is also on a joint, so you can get it way back just if you use that neck joint separately. You get side to side, and it rotates all the way around. We have a rotation at the shoulder on a friction hinge, out to the side, up to here. Because of the transformation, you get another joint, so you get a double jointed shoulder that gets up to there. And you have a rotation at the bicep, double joint elbow, full bend. Rotation at the wrist. You do have individual fingers, but once again, they're curled. So slightly better on the Ocular Max, and the thumb's on a ball joint. So you get a little more movement on the thumb as well. And because they're individually articulated, you can pose it a little bit more. But again, they're all curled, so it does look a little funny. Rotation at the waist, ab crunch on a ratchet, goes down to there. Hip skirts will move out of the way, allowing the leg to kick up to there. Back to here, hindered by the sculpt. Out to the side, also on friction. Rotation at the thigh at a cut joint. You have a 90-degree bend at the knee. What is this? 90-degree bend at the knee gets you up to there. So again, only a single joint really for the knee. Same as X-Transbots. You have ankle tilt out to there, forward and backward, and a toe tilt a little bit. So really close here between the 2. I think I'm going to end up giving it to Ocular Max, and it's really tight, but I think the hands on the Ocular Max are just a hair better as far as articulation. Also, there's a little bit of issue here with the feet, the fact that they just don't, it doesn't stand up well. which is an issue with articulation. I guess I already counted that in the build, but just by a hair, I'm going to give it over to Ocular Max on articulation. All right, next we'll talk about the transformation and engineering on these two. When it comes to transformation, this is kind of, again, a no-brainer. I'm going to give it to Ocular Max. Very, very fun, intuitive design, fun to flip back and forth. X-Transbots, not fun at all, especially the legs. I'm not even sure it's going to last, to be honest, but just not fun. So we'll give that transformation to Ocular Max. As far as engineering, I think they both turn into a pretty good-looking ambulance, and the robot modes are both relatively clean. But the fact that this is all in one and, you know, turns into an arm, it has the hand built in, whereas this one is a separate part. This is kind of cool, but I don't know if I'd give this the engineering award. So I think I'm going to give engineering also to Ocular Max. Just their designs and engineering overall, especially to get it to be all in one, I think it's pretty cool. Now, when it comes to the combiner, we're not talking about the combiner today. So that's kind of out of here. We also haven't finished the combiner, so we don't know what they're going to look like. But I'm pretty sure X-Transbots combined mode is going to be far superior in size, in articulation, in ratchets, and all that kind of stuff. We're just not including that in this comparison here today, since we don't have the combined modes ready yet. And there they are in vehicle modes. And I have to say, this guy is such a pain to transform, especially the legs, a lot of bending of plastic. But once you get it here, I do think the X-Transbots overall is a better looking vehicle. And I think it's because they have the consistent translucent blue windows, whereas the Ocular Max went with translucent light blue for the front, but then painted blue for the back. And the inconsistency just looks a little weird. You get to the side, they both have emergency. I think this emergency looks a little better just because it's a bright red that matches the lights on top. They both have the lights. And then on the back, again, I like the way they did the rear window and the lights. It's just more realistic vehicle, but still cartoon accurate enough. They both have rubber tires. The X-Transbots has die-cast wheels. It also has, like I mentioned during Gimmicks, an opening door and an opening trunk, and you have storage for the gun right there. This one also stores the gun. It's inside. So overall, I do think that the X-Transbots vehicle mode looks better, and I like the little gimmick features. You know, that's kind of cool. I just hate transforming this, but it does have a better vehicle mode. All right, now let's talk about the cost on these two. And normally I use the prices from ages3andup.com. And last time I did the video, I talked about the price on the Magic Square Onslaught, and I got a lot of comments about it. So let me just explain. The reason I use Ages 3 and Up is because it's the same price. US, Canada retail, generally speaking, are the same prices. And they tend to not change it after they post it. A lot of retailers do adjust the prices up or down based on sales and based on demand. Ages 3 and Up tends to keep it the same, and that's why I use their price. And it is identical, the same price, or very close to the US retail prices. And the Magic Square Onslaught, for whatever reason, in US and Canadian retail is $230. However, I bought it from Magic Square directly, and it was cheaper. But to be consistent, I'm going to keep using the same prices from the same store throughout all of these comparisons, which I've done for years and years. So speaking of that, since Ages 3 and Up didn't have this guy listed, they didn't have Paragon, I went to toydojo.com, which is another US retailer, and they have this guy listed for $150 retail, this guy listed for $110. So Medicus is going to win on cost. And the final factor in this comparison is the members' choice category, where I asked my members which one they prefer just based on their own personal preferences and no other factors. And X-Transbots is going to win this one. And I'm not surprised. You know, I think it does look a little bit more mean or athletic. And also, the fact that it's fully painted, it tends to stand out a little bit better on the shelf. So X-Transbots is going to win the members' choice category. So final thoughts on the comparison. You can see the score there. And we're ending up here in a tie. And I am kind of surprised. I actually thought X-Transbots were going to run away with this one. But the Ocular Max, as always, the things that they do right are the transformation engineering and the articulation, you know, the typical things that they get right, and the build quality. The X-Transbots, they did the things that they do typically well, which is the paint and the overall look of the guy and the accessories. They always do more accessories, sometimes the gimmicks, you know. And I was surprised that they also, it was very close on the Members' Choice category. I thought for sure this guy was going to run away with Members' Choice, but it was very close. But there you go, ends up in a tie. So I think either one, if you're planning to transform and mess with your figure more, then I believe the Ocular Max is going to suit you better. If you're just going to keep it in robot mode, you're not planning to transform it or mess with it too much, then the X-Transbots might do it. Now, we didn't look at combined mode here, so that's a big factor here, and I do think X-Transbots is going to have the better combined mode overall. We don't have either of these finished yet, so we don't really know, but just based on what's happened so far, I do think X-Transbots is going to be the bigger, more intimidating, more articulated, or more, I guess, ratcheted and beefier combiner compared to the two. So if you're going for the combined mode, I do think X-Transbots is probably the way to go on that. But that's really it for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Grant Z for allowing me to borrow his copy of Paragon. And we'll see you next time.